Hallelujah. He is truly risen, as he said he would. Hallelujah. I am not getting that yet. Christ is risen. Hallelujah. That's it. That's it. Friends, today we gather to celebrate the feast of all feasts, the resurrection of Christ. And it is a foundational feast for our faith. If Christ had not been risen, in vain is our preaching, and in vain is your presence here today. You know, the gospel and the readings that we heard today tell us about the significance of this event, which changed the life of the apostles who still didn't understand what resurrection would mean until Jesus had to rise from the dead and come to appear to them. Last night we had the beautiful experience of baptizing several of our members and receiving into the Catholic Church nearly about 21 people. It was a great blessing for all of us. And in that I was talking to them about what Pope Benedict shared with us about the significance of the symbolism involved in that ritual of baptism and Easter Vigil. And he spoke about three such symbols. One is light, the Paschal light. You cannot miss it. Christ is the light. And then he also speaks about water, which will be sprinkled on us just in a little while. And the children that are getting baptized will be baptized with that water. Water stands, there are two kinds of water. We can imagine the water of the sea. It's a dangerous place. It represents death. It is the element of death. So it becomes a symbolic representation of Jesus' death on the cross. Christ descended into the sea, into the water of death, as Israel did into the Red Sea. But then they came out of that. Having risen from the dead, Jesus gives us life. This means that baptism is not only a cleansing, but a new birth, with Christ, as it were, descend into the sea of death so as to rise up again as new creatures. That's what happens every time we baptize a child and every time we remind ourselves of baptism. Today, when you are sprinkled upon this, we are going to ask you to renounce sin and profess your faith. And then the second kind of water is the refreshing river water. And that is a beautiful experience as well, because around that you find a lot of life. There are two kinds of water. One is the sea water, which is an element of death. But then there is this water that gives life. So also we have different kinds of people. We have people that leave us somewhat sad, and around them there is this kind of pessimism and death. But then there are people that leave you refreshed and renewed if you are around them. So this is a moment for us to reflect on what kind of people we are. We have several examples of saints who have been such people. If we find them constantly, even in our daily lives, even today, who are like a spring, certainly we are all invited to be life-giving water to our people around us. And then there is the song, Hallelujah. We all sang, the choir sang so beautifully. Hallelujah, Christ is risen. This is a new song on the lips of everyone who believes in the resurrection of Christ. It's an expression of great joy. You cannot just keep it to yourself and you know joy. one has to express it. And that is what happens when we personally experience Jesus' resurrection. You cannot simply keep it to yourself. You cannot suppress it. You have to let it out. So, my dear friends, as we celebrate this great event in the life of our faith, because of which we gather today to celebrate, I always remember this fantastic, humorous story of a family that goes to the Holy Land. You know, we have been blessed to have a lot of people go to the Holy Land in pilgrimage. I have taken several groups, but you always have a bunch of people coming with families. It so happened to one family from the U.S., they went on the pilgrimage to the fifth gospel. The Holy Land is called the fifth gospel. So where you have personally the experience of going to places where Jesus was, Jesus walked, where he cured people, where he was crucified, and so on. So it so happened to one family that they were with husband and wife's mother, and their children and all were there. And just a couple of days before their departure, the mother-in-law of this man kind of unexpectedly falls sick and then dies. So what do you do? Being in Holy Land, you are from the U.S., you have to kind of make arrangements to bring the body to the U.S., so he had to stay in touch with the U.S. Embassy to arrange for the transport. And while doing that, they have to go through a funeral home, right? The funeral director met with them, and when they were asking about the details, he said, if you were to ship the body to U.S., it will cost you $15,000. And then if you were to bury her here, it will just cost you about $500. And so this man was kind of in turmoil, what to do now. So he said, let me think about it. So he took some time off to think about it and then came back and said, no, I will take my mother-in-law back to U.S. And that man was so impressed. Oh, you love your mother-in-law so much. I'm so impressed. But why do you want to take her? It will cost you so much. Then he said, you know, I heard that this thing happened some years ago, that a man was buried here, and then after 3 days he rose, and I don't want this to happen to my mother-in-law. So that is an impactful statement to know. That guy really believed in the resurrection of Jesus. You know, then again, you know, Jesus didn't have his own tomb. He had to have the mercy of his friends to bury him. Joseph of Arimathea, who was kind of rich, he offered to give his own tomb that he prepared for himself. And Pontius Pilate was friends with him because he was in the council and so on. So Pontius Pilate asked him, Joseph, I really don't understand. You are one of the richest men in this region, and you have spent a small fortune on a new tomb for yourself and for your family, and you just want to give it away to this man, Jesus? It doesn't make sense. But Joseph said with confidence, no, it's just for the weekend. I'm renting it. So that is Easter, my friends. Jesus is truly risen. And the disciples and the ladies that went to see the tomb found it empty. You know, we don't have a description to say what really happened when Jesus rose from the dead. I mean, nobody saw it. Although the enemies saw it, the soldiers that were posted there saw it. But they wouldn't say anything about it because they didn't want this to happen. But when these women, and then later on the disciples go, they find the tomb empty. That is a very significant statement because that is our proof that Jesus is not there. And then there is another proof of the cloth that was all folded up neatly. And even if somebody was trying to steal the body of Jesus, you wouldn't take time to fold things neatly. No, they would be in a hurry to rob the body as it was the practice there, grave robbers. But then the Shroud of Turin, we all have heard. Shortly, we are arranging to bring somebody to talk to us about that. That is a clear manifestation and revelation of how true it should be. And then, of course, the apostles who go about preaching the gospel of Jesus because they personally experienced the risen Jesus in their life. And so here we are 2,000 years later following the same Jesus Christ who is risen from the dead, who has given us this new sense of purpose in our lives. Even when our life seems dark and gloomy and pessimistic, we still have hope that things are not going to be this way. Jesus has redefined what life is about. As Paul tells us in the second reading, we are looking to things of heaven, above, things that matter to us. And so, Pope Francis has something beautiful to say about our call to be people of hope. The blessed are those who respond to the forms of need in our lives with service, not by turning away, but by giving food and clothing and so on. But then he invites us to be people who can transcend from fear to hope, from darkness to light, from death to new life. Saint Chrysostom, who was a famous preacher in the early times, said this beautifully. When Christ rose, hell is angered, for it was brought to nothing. Hell is angered, for it was mocked. Hell is angered, for it was overthrown. Hell is angered, for it was put in chains. Hell received a body and encountered God. It received earth and confronted heaven. O death, where is your sting? O hell, where is your victory? Christ is risen, and you, O death, are annihilated. Christ is risen, and the evil ones are cast down. Christ is risen, and the angels rejoice. Christ is risen, and the life is liberated. Christ is risen, and the tomb is emptied of its dead. For Christ, having risen from the dead, is become the first fruits of those who have fallen asleep. To him be glory and power, and now and forever, and from all ages to all ages. Christ is risen. Do you believe it in the marrow of your bones? If you do, say it. Christ is risen. Hallelujah. I thought we did it better in the beginning. Christ is risen. Hallelujah. Christ is risen. Hallelujah. Wonderful. Now we will have the profession of faith followed by the baptism for two of our children, and then we will